Oh, you don't know. I just love you, and I get so much inspiration from you, and so thank you. And I love the kafia, fabulous. Okay, you're wearing my sorority colors, so I'm loving it. I need to get one in red and white. Okay, all right. Let me go. We're coming in 10, 3. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you today. What is happening? Well, President Trump has gone to Israel. He says that the war is over and peace is at hand. Is it really? We've got to talk about that. I want to hear what your thoughts are. Please weigh in, everybody, on X at Santita J, on Instagram, Santita Jackson IG, on Facebook, Santita Jackson and Friends. And I share it with somebody else I know, Reverend Jesse Jackson, his page. You can go on over there as well. But the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, please like and subscribe, like and subscribe. I want to know what you thought about today, what you think about today. Is peace near? And do Palestinians really have self-governance? Do they have sovereignty? It, in many ways, has been about self-determination. That's what any whole people have. Do they really have that? Where do Israelis stand? Many of them are so relieved, thankfully, to have their loved ones home today. Uh, but where do they stand with what's happened to Gaza? The polls show that many of them just really wanted their family back, but they don't want to live alongside Palestinians. That's not all, but it's a good many. So let's talk about this. Where do we go from here, and how is it that America is so central to all of this, and still the UK, because they're going to be doing the governance. But you know what? I always believe in getting people much smarter than I, better informed. So who better to bring to you than Medea Benjamin of Code Pink, sending so much love to my personal Shiro. How you doing?
Nice to be on with you, Santita. It's interesting times.
Interesting times. What do you make of the peace deal? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it will hold? And then we can get to President Trump's trip to Israel, or maybe you want to bundle it all up.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair, and unfortunately, I don't think it will hold. But I think we have to give credit to President Trump for negotiating this deal, for getting this far in getting the release of the hostages, which is great, the release of almost 2,000 captives who have been held by the Israelis, the end to the bombing, which is just, you can't imagine the relief of the people in Gaza who don't have to um, go to sleep not knowing if they're going to wake up in the morning. And my friends, they're so relieved to not have those drones buzzing over their heads. And then going to starting to get humanitarian aid in. I think there have been about 100 trucks today, but there's supposed to be 600 starting tomorrow. I mean, that is all good. The terrible sadness of people going back to where their homes were to find that they were destroyed, to find family members still under the rubble, to find that so many of their families have perished in these last 2 years. Also just fascinating to see the vanishing of this Gaza, quote, humanitarian foundation that was constructed by the Israelis and the U.S. with U.S. tax money, where over 1,000 Palestinians, hungry Palestinians, were killed waiting online. That's just gone up in smoke. Poof, it's gone, which is good. And the aid now is going to be distributed by UN and its related agencies, which is something we always said should happen from the beginning. So, there are some really important gains that have been made with this peace plan that we shouldn't belittle. But when you look towards the long term, it looks bleak because Where are the Palestinians in all of this?
Mhm.
With Donald Trump and Tony Blair and Jared Kushner, and now some of these really repressive Arab heads of states like Sisi being put onto a board of peace to be in charge of the future of Gaza, that does not bode very well for the Palestinian people.
Well, help me to understand that, because they said they wanted to disarm Hamas. They don't want to deal with Hamas. Where will the Palestinian Authority fit in all of this? Because indeed, Hamas, in many respects, they've been joined at the hip with Israel, at least because they didn't want to deal with the Palestinian Authority, also known as the PLO. So then they said, okay, we'll fund an opposition party, right? Do I have this right? And then, and then what happened? Because it's always Hamas has made me uncomfortable upon that basis. And help me to understand what are we looking at now? I mean, who will the Palestinians have any say over their lives?
Well, Trump said that the hard part is done, which is coming together for the beginning of this plan, when the hard part is just happening now, is just starting, because Hamas has never agreed to disarm. And the Israeli military has not totally agreed to leaving Gaza. In fact, it still occupies a large portion of Gaza. We don't know who these international forces are that are supposed to come in to stabilize the region, and we don't know what stabilization even means. We don't know what the governance of Gaza will look like. Israel said it doesn't want the PA involved at all, and yet the PA was there at the table today with Trump. Um, so there are huge, huge questions that remain to be worked out. And of course, then there is all this baloney about the two-state solution, with country after country now at the last UN meeting, because of pressure from their people, thinking that recognizing a Palestinian state would calm some of the internal opposition. But what does that mean? There is no Palestinian state. We're not closer to a Palestinian state. Is Israel going to get rid of 800,000 settlers in the West Bank and East Jerusalem? And in a one secular state, can Palestinians and Israelis really live side by side? So there is no, quote, solution in sight, except for continued just talk at this point, and even written into a 20-point plan that at some point there would be a Palestinian state, but nothing in that plan that would get us closer to that.
What would a Palestinian state mean? Would it be Gaza and the West Bank? Would that be a single state, or would the West Bank, which is way on the other side of Israel, would they have to form another state? Would it be one? And what does having a state? What does that mean to the people?
Well, that's a really good question, because a state would be able to defend itself, which means it would have its own army. But Israel is absolutely opposed to any state that would have a military. What would it be? Well, those who still believe in a two-state solution talk about it being the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. But the West Bank is just full of Israeli settlers. So how are you going to govern the West Bank? The A state means you have the right to your own borders. Even with this peace plan, the people in Gaza have no right to get on a boat and leave, or allow even the flotilla ships to come in, for example. They have no control over their borders. They have no control over their airspace. I don't hear talk about a an airport being built within Gaza, and Gaza did have an airport at one time that the Israelis destroyed. So to have a state means you have to have control by land, by sea, by air, and we don't see any of that in the near-term future in Gaza.
We're talking with Medea Benjamin of Code Pink about President Trump's peace deal, his trip to Israel, what Palestinian statehood is like. And could the Palestinians, well, can the Palestinians and the Israelis coexist? Should it be one state or should it be two? What say you?
Well, I have been for a one state, one democratic secular state because I can't see how a two-state solution would really work. But, who am I to say? All I want is for Palestinians to have the rights that they deserve, and however that is configured is good. But right now, I fear that with the way things are going, that people are going to forget in large part about the whole disaster that happened the last 2 years, that we won't see any accountability, and that the world will not pay attention to what's happening, just like they didn't pay attention before the October 7th Hamas invasion. It was precisely because the Arab countries were joining Israel in these Abraham Accords and forgetting the Palestinian people, in fact, throwing them under the bus, that Hamas did this. And now we're back to the point where Trump is saying, well, we now have to get these Arab countries to sign these Abraham Accords, these peace agreements, these trade deals with Israel, so that the whole region can, quote, live in peace. One good thing I think Trump is talking about is peace with Iran. He seems to be saying today in several different venues that he thinks there could be a peace deal with Iran, and that's good. But, to have peace in the region, you have to have justice. And what we don't see in this plan is what this means in terms of self-determination for the Palestinian people.
What were the Abraham Accords? What are the Abraham Accords, and are they still being enforced?
It is amazing that the countries that signed the Abraham Accords, like Morocco, UAE, did not tear up those accords during this period of genocide. They kept them. And it means that there are trade agreements between those individual countries and Israel. It means getting back into, quote, normal, friendly relations with Israel, recognizing that Israel is a legitimate state and part of that region, and incorporating the Israel into the economics of those other countries. So what is so important for Trump is to see Saudi Arabia sign a deal with Israel, because that is sort of the golden prize that would cement Israel's position in the Middle East, to be recognized by Saudi Arabia, the richest country in the region, the country that holds the key to the Muslim faith with Mecca and Medina. So it's to be seen, because Saudi Arabia has held back, saying they want to see a true path towards a Palestinian state before they will do that. Now, will they say that this peace deal gives them that path, or will they be saying, no, we have to see where this is leading first? I think there's going to be tremendous pressure on these countries in the Middle East to sign these Abraham Accords, to recognize Israel, to increase their trade with Israel, and never to hold Israel accountable for 2 years of horrific genocide and the destruction of the entire Gaza Strip.
Will that hold with their people? I mean, because even in a monarchy, you are allowed to exist by the consent of the governed, even if they are your subjects, right? I mean, we've seen monarchies overturned. Can they, does that, do the Abraham Accords, are they at odds with the sentiments of the will of the people in the region?
They're totally at odds, absolutely at odds. And what you say should be true, but I'm afraid that it's not, because the consent of the people, well, how do you know when you have governments that are so repressive that any kind of dissent is dealt with by imprisonment and sometimes with execution? So whether it's Saudi Arabia or whether it's Egypt, I mean, these are incredibly repressive states, but they know that their people have been against the cooperation of their governments with Israel. And that's why so many governments have held back from signing those Abraham Accords. But I don't know that the people in those countries have the power to stop their governments from doing that. And with this pressure that Trump is going to put on them, with this whole facade that there is now a peace plan, that the region is at peace, will they be able to pull the wool over the heads of their own people and go ahead and do what Trump wants them to do? Maybe.
But how do they do this? We saw Jared Kushner helping to negotiate the deal along with Mr. Witkoff. Um, but he's got a financial interest in the new Gaza, if you will, along with the Saudis. How is that supposed to work? I mean, and what are the Palestinians going home to? There are no hospitals. I mean, the schools are gone. Now, I believe they need to go home, and rebuild. I mean, and they're they're tough people because as soon as they never left. They never left. I have so much admiration for that. That having been said, what now? I mean, let's start with the business interest in turning Gaza into a resort, because that's what Mr. Kushner and Mr. Witkoff and the Saudis, not Mr. Witkoff. Certainly, it's been reported that Mr. Kushner and the Saudi royal family have a financial uh, arrangement, and they have an interest in redeveloping Gaza.
Well, first, let's recognize, Santita, that what Jared Kushner and Trump originally wanted to do was ethnic cleansing. They wanted to get rid of the people of the region. In fact, they were negotiating with countries in Africa to take Palestinians. So that didn't happen. And that is a positive thing. On the other hand, when you said Palestinians didn't leave, many of them were in such horrific conditions that they did want to leave, but they couldn't leave because the borders were closed. So,
And the borders were closed. By closing the borders, that left them vulnerable to destruction. Yes?
absolutely, it left them being killed on the lines to get food. It left them being killed walking to the safe places where they were told to go. So the
And they're
borders,
still there.
yeah, yeah, and when with this deal, we don't know when they say they're going to open up the border with Rafah. That's the border to Egypt. We don't know what that means. Does that mean that people from Gaza, and they say they can leave and come back? Can they really? If they leave, can they really come back? Will they have passports to leave? Who will be taking them in? Anyway, this is the issue for many people who want to leave. For those who want to stay, there has to be very quickly not only a flooding in of food and medicines and setting up of makeshift hospitals, but things like the water treatment facilities and the pure water purification and the infrastructure that they need. Now, you bring up Jared Kushner wanting to turn this into a profit making. Well, you heard Trump talking today about these wealthy Arab countries and how they have so much money that rebuilding Gaza will be pocket change to them, and it will be important to them for the stabilization of the region, but they have all this money. So certainly the dollar signs are in the heads of Jared Kushner and others when they say, okay, we'll take billions and billions of Saudi money and we'll get contracts for rebuilding. It's just crazy still, the image that they have, because there's 2 million people there who need homes, who need everything, and who don't have money, don't have livelihoods, don't have anything. Now, on the positive side, Santita, there are many, many Palestinians in the diaspora who are well educated, who are engineers and doctors and all kinds of professionals. And many of them want to go back and participate in the rebuilding of Gaza. So if Palestinians were given the chance with money that was coming from, so it might come from Arab countries when, of course, it should come from Israel. But when we say, would Israel ever pay reparations? No. And if they ever did, it would be a U.S. taxpayers' money. So that's a big issue about, shouldn't Israel have to pay? But the Arab countries will probably pay, but it should be Palestinians who get a chance to rebuild their own country.
Will they be able to? Will they be allowed to? I mean, given Israel has oversight, I mean, physical oversight of them, how will they be free to move? Can they leave the Gaza Strip and come back? I mean, are they dealing with any restrictions to their movements? I mean, and of course, if you want to rebuild, you've got to get materials, and companies need to come in.
Israel still controls everything. Israel even controls the border with Egypt. And Netanyahu has said internally inside Egypt, we will never give up control. So what does that mean for the Palestinians? It certainly does not mean freedom. It certainly does not mean self-determination. So, when Trump says, okay, this deal is done and now we're going to have a board of peace and be in charge of rebuilding, how are the Palestinians going to be in charge if there is a board of foreigners, but Israel in the end controls everything?
But what is a board of peace? I mean, all of this sounds very high-minded, and yet we're talking about, how can you have peace when you don't have control? You have quiet, but you don't. Do you really have peace, Medea Ben?
Really have quiet. I mean, there was just a very beloved journalist who was killed yesterday, not by the Israelis, but by armed gangs that the Israelis have armed. And these people are still there and they have weapons. And Hamas is still there and they have weapons. And of course, the Israelis are still there. So it's not peace. It's not the bombings going on, which is good, but we don't know what peace really means. And if all of this construction material that needs to come in, all of these big machinery that they need to clear the rubble, will Israel allow that to come in? Will Israel allow that to come in through the Egyptian border without examining every single thing that goes in there and using every excuse, as they have in the past, to hold up these trucks from coming in? And it's so interesting, Santita, that remember, Israel said, we can't be sending in these truckloads of food and medicine because Hamas loots it all, Hamas steals it all. And then suddenly, as of today, they can send it in. And as of tomorrow, they're going to be sending in 600 trucks. So that was just a made-up excuse all along. But Israel can turn off the spigot whenever it wants to. Right now, it's saying because the people of Gaza, Hamas, has not been able to find all of the bodies under the rubble to send back, that if they don't find them all and send them all back within a quick period of time, that Hamas is violating the agreement. And that means Israel doesn't have to stick to it. So Israel will be looking for any excuse not to remove all the Israeli forces, not to open up the borders, not to comply with the most important parts of what a peace agreement would be.
Are they a trusted? Can they be a trusted partner in this peace process?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They lie, they cheat, they violate every peace agreement that they sign. The only thing that's different this time is that the eyes of the world are on them and that there are so many other countries involved. You know, it is remarkable that Trump was able to gather the heads of state of about 20 different countries on a moment's notice and get them to Sharm el Sheikh. And you have standing behind Trump not only the heads of state of Middle East countries, but also of Turkey, of Italy, of Spain, Spain that has been the most progressive in terms of cutting off relations with Israel, standing behind Trump. So it is really amazing that he's brought all these people together, but will the eyes of all these different countries stay on this deal? And will they be pushing Israel? And the only one that could really push Israel is the US, is Trump. And when you see Trump speaking to the Knesset about how wonderful they are, and when you hear Jared Kushner addressing them and saying the IDF never brutalized the people of Gaza the way that Hamas brutalized Israelis, I mean, can you trust them? Absolutely not.
So, what about? Uh, I'm just really curious about how all of this is going to work, because when you dig down into this 20-point plan, it seems like there's so many places where this can go wrong, right? Like where the military, where the IDF are situated, um, who has the control of movement, arming the gangs. That's not in the 20-point peace plan, but we've seen bad actors armed in the United States by the government in order to break up progressive movements. Is that the point?
Well, absolutely. And also to give the Israelis an excuse about not being able to send in humanitarian aid. They had these gangs that were looting the trucks and then selling all this donated food on the commercial market and making a ton of money from that. So yes, it's part of destabilizing Gaza, of creating problems for the people of Gaza, and then not allowing there to be any police force or military force, which was what Hamas was, to try to stabilize the situation. And when we talk about Hamas, remember, it was not just a military wing, it has a whole administrative wing. And when Israel says that Hamas has to leave, well, one, there's supposedly another 15,000 fighters there. But what about all the people that worked for the government of Hamas? What's going to happen to all of them? This is, again, something that's not in the peace plan.
But many of us don't look at them. Well, certainly they're not framed as the government by Western media. But to your point, they are the government. And yet, part of the peace deal is for them not to exist. How is that going to work? I mean, are they duly elected by the people? Not that that's really any of our business, because there's so many people who do so many things that are wrong. I mean, these elections are, so many of them don't have integrity. And for us to stand on this moral high horse and say, I'm going to recognize you, but not you. And look at who got the Peace Prize. Someone who's trying to overthrow the government in Venezuela with the assistance of the United States and Israel. I just don't understand.
Well, that's right. And, Hamas was elected in 2006, and there haven't been elections since then. And yet, as you say, do elections matter? Do people care about elections? Right now, what they want is a roof over their head and a bathroom to use and food to eat. And when Trump was standing there with the 20 heads of state, half of them, are countries that have never had elections, like the Saudi kingdom. And certainly Sisi's, quote, election in Egypt is not considered one that's free and fair. So I don't think it's so much an issue of elections. It's having a trusted not corrupt governance. And they talk about technocrats. And, Hamas has said before this peace deal, early on, they said, we are okay with not being in charge. We're not going to be the governing body. So they've talked about technocrats coming in. Well, who's going to pick who those technocrats are? Who's going to oversee all of this? This peace board with Trump? I mean, talk about a colonialism on steroids. The U.S. and Tony Blair from the U.K. being in charge of the future of Gaza. That doesn't make any sense. So all of this has to be worked out. But, I go back to where we started, Santita, which is the bombs are not dropping. The food is coming in. Prisoners and hostages home with their families. This is all a good beginning. And if we can push on each measure of those 20 points and take the ones that are no good and get rid of them, and take the ones that are good and push on that. And remember, it was the Muslim and Arab leaders that Trump met with on the sidelines of the UN Security Council meeting that led to this plan. And so those countries do have some influence over Trump. And some of them, are very big countries like Turkey and like Saudi Arabia. So if they stay involved in some way, there could be some good pushback on some of the worst of the Trump plan.
Should we read anything to the fact that Erdogan of Turkey, the head President Erdogan of Turkey, refused to attend this summit if Netanyahu was in attendance? Because indeed, his attendance was agreed to, but apparently, according to press reports, when the President Erdogan was in the air, apparently he found out that Prime Minister Netanyahu was going to be there, and he said, absolutely not. Is that what should we read anything into that? I mean, because they do have the biggest military in the region, yes, the Turkish do. So does he have weight and leverage in the region?
I think he has tremendous leverage in the region. And I think he also knew that the people of Turkey would be horrified if he was standing with Netanyahu at this point. And he could not allow that to happen and then go home and face his own people. So I think we should read a lot into that. And I think it was probably a sigh of relief to everybody that was there that Netanyahu was not there. Because while Trump has said in the Knesset, now Israel needs to revive its standing in the world, that it took a hit during this time, but now is the time to, show the world that Israel is really part of the civilized world. And I think it's not going to be easy for Israel to revive its image in the world. So, yes, it was an important statement that Erdogan made, and I think important for everybody else there. Imagine the head of Spain, who has been so pressured by massive demonstrations, or the president of Italy, who has faced millions of people in the street, to be seen with not only Trump, which is bad enough, but to be seen with Netanyahu would be terrible for them. So it was a good thing that Netanyahu was not there.
Well, can Israel recover this lost ground? I mean, President Trump, it was reported a couple of years ago, he said to Prime Minister Netanyahu, this is a public relations disaster for you. Finish the job, do whatever it is that you were trying to do, but get out of there. This is here. I mean, that was the report. That was the report from Israeli newspapers. And can the Israelis recover this lost ground? First, what have Israelis lost on the world stage? Let's start there.
Israel is hated throughout the world. Israel is seen as a pariah state throughout the world. There are people who knew almost nothing about Israel 2 years ago that now have a newfound knowledge and disgust with the Israeli state, and not just Netanyahu, with the apartheid occupation state that will not be able to wipe its hands of the blood. And let's remember, as we're talking about, we have no idea what's going to happen in Gaza in terms of governance. Let's talk a minute about the West Bank and the horrors that the people are enduring there with these violent settlers. And that information is getting out to the world as well. So when you talk about Israel trying to revive its image, we're going to keep seeing the images of these young, horrific settlers who are confronting the Palestinian people and destroying their olive groves and demolishing their homes. And there is slated to be a whole new string of settlements to absolutely divide up the East Jerusalem and the West Bank. So that's not going away. I think that that Donald Trump is very hopeful about being able to put this all under the rug and say, oh, genocide, 2 years of absolute destruction. You know what, Santita, when these international journalists start going into Gaza, they're going to get out the stories too, the ones that many Americans haven't seen. I saw a journalist, I think it was from Italy, who got into Gaza, I'm not sure how, and he was crying at the destruction he saw and said, I never thought it would be this bad. So we're going to keep getting stories and stories and stories. The truth is going to come out more and more. The more Israel opens things up, which it doesn't want to do, the more we're going to see the horrors of what happened in the last 2 years and the horrors that are going on in the West Bank. And that is not going to be something that can be erased from Israel's image.
Will the world demand that Israel open up and let people see Gaza and see what happened in Gaza?
Well, I feel like they will have to. A part of this agreement is, are you really going to open up borders? And if you open up borders, then you're going to have to allow people in. You're going to have to allow in the medical doctors that Israel has been saying, you can go in, you can't go in, you can go in, you can't go in. Oh, and by the way, if you go in, you have to take out all this baby formula that's in your suitcase. They can't do that anymore. They have to let in these international people, and there's supposed to be international troops that are going in. We hear about Indonesia sending in troops. We hear about other countries sending in troops to be part of stabilization forces. I mean, what are they going to see? What are they going to write about? What are they going to hear? So there are going to be more eyes of the world on what happened directly in Gaza right now. And that is going to be, the truth is going to hurt.
Well, am I to understand that the West Bank is not part of this peace deal? Is this only pertaining to Gaza?
It's only pertaining to Gaza.
So the West Bank, that is where we have these settlements. So are the settlements have they been declared illegal internationally?
Oh, yes, they've been illegal internationally for a long time, but that hasn't stopped Israel from building more and more of these settlements. And, there was a time under Obama when he objected to the construction of new settlements, and Israel said, well, too bad, and they went ahead anyway. And then under Bush and certainly under Trump, they continued to build settlements, and they continued to take over areas that belong to Palestinians. They create these little outposts that are just a couple of settlers, and then from that outpost they stake their ground, and then they start creating a settlement there. So all of this is totally illegal under international law, but they keep doing it.
Will we see any movement, just given what's happened with Gaza? Do you think we might see any movement with the West Bank?
Well, it's been interesting in Congress how more and more members of Congress have felt compelled to speak out against what's happening in the West Bank. There have been a number of American citizens who've been killed in the West Bank. Some of the most famous are like the journalist Shireen Akleh, but there are a number of other ones. And so we see the speaking out against that. We see calls for a sanctioning of settlers. And remember, there's still thousands and thousands of political prisoners inside of Israel, including Americans, like a 16-year-old American boy who was captured on the West Bank because he was supposedly with a group of teens who were throwing stones. This all continues to persist, and unfortunately, doesn't seem like it will be checked with this peace agreement, because it doesn't do anything to stop the settlements or to stop the violence of the settlers.
How do you think this? Do you think that? Do you think that this peace deal will help America on the global stage?
Yes, I think it does. I think Trump will gain a lot of support from what he has done. He did something that Biden was not able to do. I think, the fact that he was with 20 heads of state, he says, I think Rubio said this is the most significant thing for the Middle East that's happened in 50 years. And Trump is going, only 50 years? I think it's more than that. So, they will milk it for all it's worth. And yes, even in Israel, they say that people hate Netanyahu and they love Trump.
Whoa,
So,
what did you make of that the other night?
yeah.
And you had Jared Kushner, his wife, Ivanka, and they were, when Trump's name was called, there were cheers. Tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people in Hostage Square, in the middle of Tel Aviv. But when they called Netanyahu's name, boos. What does that mean?
So many boos that they couldn't keep talking. They had to figure out how to quiet the crowd to keep going.
But they look stunned. I mean, I could see Jared Kushner and Ivanka. They look, the looks on their faces betrayed them. If they did not have poker faces, I think they were surprised that Prime Minister Netanyahu is apparently very unpopular.
Yeah, I mean, Netanyahu is a brilliant propagandist, and he will be turning this whole thing into his win, and will probably get some popularity back for having, quote, managed to get the hostages home. He will get all he can from this. But, we have to be careful that our issue should not be who is the person leading Israel. It's the state of Israel. It's the makeup of Israel. It's the way that an apartheid state has been built up, and an occupation that continues to exist in Gaza, because Gaza has no control over its air, sea, and land. And this has to change. So whether it's changing Netanyahu or Netanyahu stays on, it's the structure of the Israeli government that has to change.
How will this impact our politics? This past weekend, I went to an event with Vice President Kamala Harris. It was packed to the rafters in Chicago at the Auditorium Theater. Wow. Thousands of people there. There was not an empty seat. She was interrupted several times, but I think in public life that happens. But the crowd, she has her crowd, and only 1.5 million people. She only got 1.5 million fewer votes than President Trump, and I think we need to be clear on that. 90 million people didn't vote now. That's real too. But number one, do you think that Gaza cost her the election?
Oh, I definitely think that Gaza cost her the election. But on the other hand, I do understand that the majority of people don't vote based on foreign policy. But it
Mhm.
was that small margin that cost her the election. And yet, as we look forward, I think that in the short term, this is going to give a big boost to Trump. And yet, when it comes to the midterms and certainly presidential elections, people are going to be voting on the basis of how they see things domestically. And that's just the reality of our system here. And when you look domestically, you see the horrible kidnapping of people in our neighborhoods by ICE. You see Trump sending troops into our cities. You see a lot of discontent about how things are going domestically. And hopefully, the Democrats can grow a spine and recognize that they have to stand up in the way that Mamdani is doing it in New York City,
Mhm.
and copy that kind of response to get people to see the Democratic Party as a better alternative. But in the meantime, I don't think that the Middle East is going to play a major role in the next election.
At all.
Well, for some of us, but when it's a presidential election, it makes a bigger difference because you have
Mhm.
to win those states, those swing states. In the midterm election, maybe I take that back because I do see a lot of new exciting candidates that are running saying they're not going to take APAC money. And
Yeah.
we haven't talked at all about APAC and the influence of APAC. And
Please, please, because Miriam Adelson was mentioned by Trump. She, was there with him today. I mean, let's start with APAC. And Solomon, we will get to your question in a hot second. But what do you make of APAC? I mean, so many people look on the right and the left. Three-quarters of young Republican voters want APAC out of our politics. They do not. I mean, they really mirror what's happening on the left with the youth. I think Jonathan Greenblatt was right. This is a generational shift. He said, these kids are gone. He said, you all keep making this about party when he was in that leadership meeting of, Jewish organizations. And he said, wait, it's a generational shift. We have lost the young. And I certainly don't think that the Ellisons buying TikTok is going to help and CBS. I think it will worsen things. I mean, and more broadly for the Jewish community. That's what concerns me.
yeah, it's unclear right now. I think there is a huge upswell of people, as you say, particularly among the young people, who are sick and tired of APAC interfering in the internal affairs of our government and trying to set foreign policy. And we see more and more Congress people, and especially people running for office, who are saying they're not going to take APAC money. And I think that's very refreshing to people. So I do think, in that sense, that the issues of the Middle East and the issues of foreign lobby groups will have an impact on the midterm elections. And yet, it's not enough to say that you're not going to take APAC money. I think you're not going to take APAC money, and you don't want to see ICE kidnapping people on the street, and you don't want to see National Guard troops on our streets, and you do want to see a good healthcare system. All of these things have to be part of a package. But I do think that not taking APAC money is very symbolic right now, because it's not just about where you stand on the issue of Israel and its treatment of the Palestinians. It's where you stand on what comes first for you. Is it foreign countries? Is it Israel? Is it Ukraine? Is it NATO, or is it the U.S.? And do you want to not be giving U.S. money to fuel foreign wars? And Santita, we haven't talked at all, and it only comes up in this respect to talk about Ukraine. But there, it's seen that the Democrats are the war party. The Democrats are the one that want to keep funding that. So I think Democrats have to be careful. This America First mantra is very appealing to people. Some of us are internationalists and we don't like it, but many Americans do say America first, and America first means not spending our money in these overseas wars. It should also mean not spending $1 trillion on the Pentagon preparing for war.
Mm.
But yet, I think a start of that is to get these politicians to say they're not going to take APAC money. And that sets us on a pathway of saying the U.S. shouldn't be involved in the internal affairs of countries all over the world.
Which leads us to one of my final questions for you. Solomon Harris says, it's good to see you, Solomon. Please ask Medea Benjamin, what does she think about Trump telling the president of Israel that he should pardon Netanyahu from his crimes or for his crimes?
I think that's absolutely horrible. The U.S. president should not be interfering in the internal affairs of other countries, whether it's saying that Milei and not Milei, that Bolsonaro in Brazil should be pardoned, or that Netanyahu should be pardoned.
No, it wasn't a slip. We just gave Malay a whole lot of money, billions, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah, but I mean, in terms of saying that that Lula in Brazil should not be going after Bolsonaro, is the same thing as saying that the judiciary in Israel should not be going after Netanyahu. It really is a horrible thing for the U.S. president to be saying that on the world stage, and today was really the world stage. And there are so many objections to foreigners getting involved in U.S. politics, whether it's even true or not. Mm-hmm. The Chinese, the Russians, whoever. We don't want foreign countries involved in our politics, and we should not be involved in theirs.
Is there anything that's been left unsaid? I mean, because I know we're now we are a year away from 2026. And, now we're dealing with ICE. We're looking at our food prices. We have... we're seeing how the tariffs are hitting people. I mean, they're hitting our farmers. We could have empty shelves next year because they needed those subsidies so that they
needed the workers.
Yeah, to take care of the workers, to plant their crops. It's just, I mean, it seems like there's a pile-on, and the president's talking about firing yet thousands more people.
And 100% tariffs on China he wants to do now again.
So I mean, which means we're not going to be able to afford to buy anything from China.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to come back to bite the Republicans, because what they're doing is just messing with the global economy willy-nilly, whatever Trump feels like doing that day. And it's creating havoc. And it is going to, I think, hurt them very much in the midterm elections if the Democrats can show themselves as a real alternative.
Well, just moving forward, I mean, how should we view today? And just how should we view tomorrow? Because I'm anxious to see how all of this is going to work out, because I just don't know. I don't see where the Palestinians really have sovereignty. I see all of these layers on top of them. I'm glad the bombing is stopped for today. I'm glad some food is getting in today. But, when they start pulling up that rubble and seeing what remains of loved ones, Ralph Nader said last year it's well north of 200,000. I wouldn't doubt that. I just wonder how people are going to feel, Medea Benjamin.
Yeah, I think there's initial euphoria that the bombs have stopped, but then it starts sinking in how much they've lost and how bleak the future is. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be very, very hard for the people in Gaza. I do think, and seeing Netanyahu and Trump take such credit for this, while they are bearing such heavy burden for going back to nothing, going back to destroyed homes, and they don't even have tents that will protect them from the winter. So we're going to have to put a lot of pressure on our government to uh, get this aid in quickly and in massive amounts, to open up for the international community to go in there, to make sure that Palestinians are involved in the governance of whatever is the future structure. And I think we have to put more eyes on the West Bank and what is happening there. We have to make sure that the UN, the UNRWA, that the US has maligned so much, is able to function. I mean, there's so much that has to be done. And the Israelis could start bombing again in a week from now or 2 weeks from now. We said they can't be trusted, and they certainly can't be. And there's so much internal pressure in Israel to say, well, the job was never done. You even say there's 15,000 Hamas soldiers left. They didn't defeat Hamas. So all I'm saying is that as we wrap up here, Santita, is that people shouldn't keep their eyes off, shouldn't drop this and say, okay, now we can go on the next thing. In fact, there are things that we can do that link the issues of ICE and the troops on our street and Gaza together. And that's some of these companies like Palantir that are responsible for the surveillance that is being used everywhere from the border and in our communities, and to track every movement of the people inside Gaza and the West Bank. So I encourage people to get involved in some of those boycott campaigns that are going on that really do show the very tight connections that exist between the surveillance and repression here at home and what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank to the Palestinian people.
Just one more question for you. Just one more. Why should Americans care about Gaza, Israel, the West Bank?
Well, I just mentioned about how we are so intertwined, whether it's police forces in the US being trained by the Israelis, or the kind of technology that the US and Israel are developing together that is creating the surveillance society here at home, and the kind of repression that we're seeing in our streets. But also because I think Gaza is a window on the world. Today is, for some of us, Indigenous Peoples Day, and for others, it's Columbus Day. And Columbus being celebrated is really a tragedy because it's an example of the kind of brutal colonization that led to genocide and mass killings and mass rape. That is what we have seen in these last 2 years in Gaza. So to recognize that genocide, when it happens anywhere in the world, if nobody is held accountable, it will happen again. And the world has to stand up and say no.
Medea Benjamin, my hero, Code Pink, everybody. Let's think about what's happening today. Pray for everybody in that region. I mean, everybody. People in the West Bank, people in Gaza, people in Israel, because lions and lambs are to lie down together. And at the end of the day, God loves us all. And we need to figure out a way to love each other. You don't have to like each other, but you do need to love each other. And we need to figure out a relationship in which we can peacefully and lovingly coexist. I know we can do it, but a thought away. The Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Well,